Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, this episode is really geared towards founders and founders specifically in the tech space. And I had the absolute pleasure of speaking with CEO David Carter of Innovation Factory, which is one of 17 regional innovation centers based in Hamilton, Ontario. And David is just a wealth of knowledge, especially tech knowledge, starting his career at Microsoft, then going on and successfully having his own startup, and then most recently he's on his 11th year as CEO at Innovation Factory. So David is no stranger to the startup ecosystem, and we shared some of the challenges that the founders are facing, some of the successes, what they're doing well, and just what they can do to really create a successful outcome, but also make entrepreneurship enjoyable. And some of the areas we talked about was really, a lot of people have built a product and they're in love with it because it took a lot of time and energy and design thinking, but they really fail to consider the problem it solves. Otherwise, it's just a widget. And so we have to market this. So now that we have a product, what problem does it solve and for who? And how are they getting the job done today? And some of this is an afterthought. And so really the importance of understanding where are the gaps and how can I solve for them? And part of that is going to your network, going to community events, associations, and being that fly on the wall and understanding, what gaps exist, what questions are people asking, because that's where you can go back and really understand if you're creating content, what can I talk about? If you're developing a product, that this product would be a great solution to what people are asking for because there's a huge need. We also talked about the importance of a process and just having some form of a framework or roadmap. Because again, what happens sometimes as founders, as we hit we get a bit of traction, we're getting some adoption, things are looking good, and then all of a sudden, things start going down. And sometimes people abandon ship, and it's just like, hang on a minute. If we can identify where in the process we were, we can tweak and make modifications. And so again, this is the importance of testing and validating, do some A/B testing, iterating to know at what point did we start going down or up. What can we do to either double down on that or make some corrections, but just not abandon ship? Because a lot of this is, the time, the resources, and the passion that we've invested. We don't want to just jump ship too quickly. And we also discussed failure, and the quicker we can acknowledge that failure is part of the process and it's just your willingness to try, that we can get past it and know that, okay, instead of going left, we're going to go a little bit more right, but it's feedback. And so a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid to fail. And, we just talked about it's okay to fail. It's part of it and you learn, but you keep going. So highly recommend you take a listen. David has so many stories. He has specific companies that he has worked with personally, that he shared some of their successes, some of what they did well. He brings an element of fun to it too. People want levity. People want they want stories. They want to know how you've helped others similar to them, but not in such a scripted, mundane sounding and looking like everyone else. So he just brings a real zest, and you can feel his passion. So if you are an existing founder, if you're thinking about an idea, definitely encourage you to take a listen. If you are looking for support in terms of resources, whether it be sales, marketing, venture, backing, anything like that, Innovation Factory is a fabulous innovation center that can help you regardless of the stage of the journey you're at. So hope you enjoy it as much as I did. As always, I'm continually learning. So David opened my eyes on many things, and Enjoy the show, and we'll see you next time. So, with the beginning of the new year 2024, I am delighted to bring David Carter, the CEO of Innovation Factory, to the podcast, as I know he's going to share tons of wisdom and expertise that a lot of founders are going to put into practice. So, David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I want to begin because you're no stranger to entrepreneurship yourself, and I think that's very helpful to the founders that you support. But why don't you just give us a bit of a high level background of your past in tech? I know you started at Microsoft, you had a startup of your own, and now you're the CEO of Innovation Factory. So why don't you just share a little bit about your journey and kind of how you got to where you are at Innovation Factory today?
Yeah, it's a weird one. So drop out, ended up at a restaurant. The owner was smart enough to buy a computer in the very early days, so I got kind of hooked on what PCs could do. Think of when you would say spreadsheets like it was a new thing. Ended up working for a consulting firm, which is kind of I think how I sort of saw the entrepreneurship thing. And as part of that, I was really the tech guy who was brought on board to help people do these things with their computers. And I sort of fell into sales from that because I think what I discovered was as you were discussing what you could fix, you were saying, and if you spent this little extra on this really good laser printer, you could also have this feature, which, in talking, you and I, seems like that's an important feature to you. And I did really well as a sort of salesperson with them. Ended up selling a bunch of stuff to the stock exchange, got hired there to manage that. And all through this time, I had been applying at Microsoft because, back in the restaurant days, one of the Microsoft clients was, or one of our clients at the restaurant ended up working at Microsoft. And, so I'd sent resumes in and been rejected. Finally, I'm at the stock exchange. I think I'm at the pinnacle of my career, the center of financial universe in Canada. And I get a call from this client. And he said, hey, you got to apply for this job. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of tired of getting turned down by Microsoft. But thank you. Like, no, this is a perfect job for you. And anyway, we had a chat. And, long story short, I ended up at Microsoft in 90. So, 26 of us in Canada, including tech support and shipping and everybody, right? And so that was, for me, that was university, right? Imagine this is before graphical interfaces were common. There was a version of Windows and there were Apples, but not like you see now. And that whole world that evolved from that, right? So desktop PCs being more than just an office product, laptops that didn't weigh, 35 pounds and all kinds of things, right up till I left at the end of 2000. So that was a fun time.
That's a great story. So it's so dropout. That's that's unexpected, but it sounds like there's a scrappiness there and that resilience is like I got to make this. And I'm just wondering if that talk to us about where that came from.
I think part of it's, just impatience. You see, and I got this in my first, consulting job where you'd see all these new products coming out, and in your head you'd be like, wow, this new product enables this new thing that we didn't do before. So to give you some timing on that, desktop publishing was new. So all of a sudden, if you spent some money on this printer, you can have this new publishing division right in house that could do some things. And that was all happening so fast that I think that's where the scrappiness comes from is, there's an impatience, like, let's get this technology going. Let's do something with it. Let's, change the world. And that's been kind of the common theme in my world was like, what are we going to reinvent with this new thing that was just handed to us? And that sort of even translated to sales. So, what are we going to reinvent now that we've got CRM systems, and how's the world going to change? And that's just always been really fascinating to me, I think.
But that's so refreshing because a lot of salespeople, and I've been in sales my entire life, don't think that way. And just that you have that, I can feel it, I can hear it in your voice, the energy. You're excited, and you're always kind of like one step, like where can this take us? And I always feel that translates to the customer that it's a transfer of enthusiasm or passion. And it's not seen as you got to buy this. It's like, look what this can do for you. Like it can take you to the next
Yeah,
level. And that's what
yeah.
you're bringing.
Well, I remember back even before the Microsoft days, and we were selling this client desktop publishing system, and the people I worked for were like, we got to be really careful on price, and we've tried to cobble together this solution at this price, and I, after meeting the client, didn't think that was really her biggest issue, that she cared that much, but you put a number down so people don't just go crazy, and I said, well, but let me show you what your workday could look like if you spent this much. And I just showed her the high end system. And I said, imagine this is your day to day job and this is how you would get stuff done. And she's like, yeah, I love it. I'll take it. And it was probably like 3.5 times more than what that we originally quoted her. But you realize that price wasn't the issue. Her issue was, I don't want to be miserable every day. I work for a big company that's got some dollars, and I want to be productive and effective. And then you just take everything on after that, whether it's changes in software. I always joke about one of the funnest features for me to ever show the public of a Microsoft product was autocorrect. So, prior to that, in the early days, when you're, this many years old, you had to press F7 if you remembered to spell check your document. And I remember showing the audience being live at like a show like a Comdex or one of those old guy computer shows. And I mistyped a word and then it had a red squiggly line. And the audience was like, oh my God, what if you've just changed my world? But everybody could relate to that feature. I was like, how many times have you forgotten to press spell check on something? Imagine if it could just show you the second you typed. And you realize what is important to people and where do they feel pain, and that's a fun conversation with people, to be honest.
And I like the word fun because it is fun when you have. And I don't like talking about the features, but when you have a feature that people want, you're just like, this is actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you mentioned pain, and I think and I would pain or challenge, whatever word you want to use, and talk to us about what you see with your members at Innovation Factory around maybe some of the challenges that they are experiencing getting their product off the ground. And is there, in your opinion, an element of not understanding the pain of their potential customers? Like you understood with the woman you were talking about that price wasn't an issue. So you had to dig deep. You had to understand what was a challenge that she was facing, and you kind of showed her the future state. And then price didn't come up. But are you seeing people really uncovering the challenge, the problem that their product solves, or is it more, an academic focus? I've designed this software, this medical device, is something,
Yeah.
and they're coming at it just from a product standpoint and not really a problem standpoint.
Well, we sure see both. I mean, so we meet with about 550 clients a year. Some of them, bumped their head and came up with a dream product and just want ready to be rich.
Yeah.
But we do have a lot of academics, and I joke because I do some of the pitch training in our life science group, which is extremely academic. And I sort of say, you folks are the worst, right? You've been working on this. This is your baby. And maybe it was a medical discovery, or it was, started as a group project. And now you're trying to figure out if there's a client for it. And you're going to spin really hard. Like, we've got this serum that does this thing. And now, to be fair, there's been a lot of drugs that have been, it came out as a diabetes drug and it turns out it's great at, reducing weight. But you see people trying really too hard to find a customer for it. That's really the hardest way to find entrepreneurship. So we really try to get them to, well, without changing the product, go and talk to who that future customer might be and find out, would they buy it? How important is it? Would they, if they got a product that's 90% there and they're not going to change for 10%. So there's so much, and it's hard. We have to push them to do this because no one wants to show their product off unless it's perfect. So inevitably, if they've got something, they'll have to show it. And I would say most entrepreneurs start product first and then try to find an audience. And maybe they have some domain experience, so they think they know what the customer wants, or and it's honestly it's the hardest route. If before you write a scrap of code, before you do any of this stuff, go and find somebody that has that problem and see if they'll buy it, and how often do they buy it? Are they the decision maker? Are they, and that's probably the art is, how do you get those meetings without sounding salesy, right? How do you, and there are a lot of ways in every category. There's a way of doing it. There's conferences where thought leaders discuss these things, and and people want to be on the ground floor of building something like that, as long as it's not, you don't make it too much of a sales pitch. So, you go to a conference and someone's talked about this big issue and you say, hey, I've got some ideas about how we might be able to solve that issue. Can I get some time with you to maybe sketch out what a product might look like? And then, you're not selling anything. And that, the ones that I think are really good at that have figured out what the path to sales would be. They figured out what that potential buyer looks like. Then you build a product for that. Building it the other way around is so, you're really kind of crossing your fingers and hoping.
Yeah, hope not a good strategy.
Mm-mm.
Not a strategy. And that's a great point. And I think I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Jobs to Be Done framework. Clayton Christensen did that, and it was.
Right, right. Yeah, Clayton Christensen, legend, who I met face to face one time. Great.
Oh, did
Just
you? He's
yeah,
amazing. Yeah, and it's just exactly that. And I see so many founders kind of sitting in their basement or with an internal team of people of yes people around them. It's like you have to test this with an audience of potentials. But I love what you said, just like going to conferences, joining even online associations, places like Innovation Factory, where you can get in front of those people. And it's leaning into that curiosity and this non-assumptive tone of just like, I hear what you say, I really love that, and I just wanted to ask a few questions or wondering if you could help me. And I think you disarm someone because there's no pitch. You're really showing your vulnerability here, that
yeah.
I'm really trying to just see if this is an idea worth exploring deeper.
Yeah, and then of course, once you're in business, as you roll out other features too. I remember flying out to REI, which is the Mountain Equipment Co-op in the U.S. equivalent, and we were testing out a social media management feature, and we're like, so how do you control messaging across 2,000 stores? And what if someone tweets something that they shouldn't? And they were like, yeah, that hasn't happened yet, but I could see where that's coming. And so it was a little bit. No one was losing sleep over this, but you start to think, put the thought in their head that maybe this will be an issue. And I remember having that whole sort of rap session with them, testing that feature out. And they had certainly the point of view of, we manage several thousand people messaging our product every day on behalf of a billion-dollar brand. Maybe we shouldn't be taking the social media thing so lightly. And again, it never felt like a sales pitch. It was all about, what's the problem you're going to have? How can we get in front of that with our software? And let's collaborate together. And so when I hear people that get shut down and they can't sell, I sort of go, maybe you're pushing too hard. Maybe you're kicking down the door, kind of wants to buy my stuff.
Yeah, and when you push, they pull away, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's an amazing example, Dave, of just what you said there. You shared an insight. You teed up an idea and that they had never heard of that before. So that's where you become that trusted advisor. But when you think about the buyer's journey, they were in that first stage of unawareness. And
Yeah.
you heightened it, that said, oh my God, we haven't experienced yet, but the ramifications downstream, if they do nothing about it, are huge.
And you and I've talked about that, about how many people assume there is already an awareness of their product, and that might be the biggest problem. And you look at all the media that's flown by us in our face online daily that we just discard. We're now amazing at discarding irrelevant messaging. So if you can at least make them aware of your product, it's the journey: awareness, consideration, trial, adoption, and then ultimately referral. They love your product so much that they're insisting their friends buy it. But people don't realize how hard awareness is. Even if you can get your message in front of them, does it get read? Does it get internalized? Because that's why we always sort of say to people think these apps or these network effect kind of apps are so easy. It's like, I'm going to build a community of this and an app that does this other thing. And what a kumbaya relationship. And you're like, well, first of all, you got to get people using it, because no one wants to come to a community where no one's using it. So you've got this network effect kind of catch 22 thing. Second of all, you got to get thousands of people to try it. Just go out and do a little test on that. It's not as easy as you think.
And so, what are some ways to move your potential audience into that from unawareness to aware? Like what you shared, that insight, that question, you had obviously thought about that. What are some other ways that founders can pique their audience's curiosity or get them thinking differently about the way in which they're doing the job now?
It really depends on who that target customer is. So, from my world, so prior to this job, I had a content management, social media management company. And for us, it was, who are the thought leaders in the space that are talking about this? Who are people listening to? And, you say the term watering holes, but where are they going to get information? And so, for us at the time, it was the analyst firm. We needed a company like Forrester Research or Gartner or Nielsen or any of those people to talk about a category of product that didn't exist, and then talk about us as a category. And certainly that was the first article being written about us by an analyst is what brought McDonald's to us. And then everything went from there. That's if you are a product that has a an analytics environment around it. But there's magazines or virtual magazines for just about everything. So, we talk about people that do advanced manufacturing. There's, Robot Daily newsletters kind of thing, or there's, I know I get a Electric Autonomy as a magazine because we have autonomous vehicle division of the business. And I'm always surprised that if there's a big audience, there's a publication for that. There's a thought leader event for that, whether it's virtual. You get in on that, because you may find that you can either get your message out there, or just by listening to those people, you may see the holes that you want to fix. Geez, everybody was wringing their hands about this issue. Maybe if I solve the issue, right?
And I think being that fly in the wall on those associations is understanding what is the issue, what questions are they asking, and what I heard there is just you have to be strategic. It's not like I'm going to leave this up to I wonder what's happening. Like you have to have, like when you went to the conferences, you had a strategy. You knew what you needed to get your name highlighted, to get them to start talking about you. And I think people are kind of more reactive, and there's a little bit of, well, I'm just going to show up here. Well, you almost have to know what the outcome you're looking for, and reverse engineer the questions, and then the people, and really be strategic about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I think again the problem with the world now is people have seen things go quote unquote viral, and so it's like, okay, I need to say something pithy or clever or whatever, and it will go viral, and they don't understand even what led to the virality of that. Did it get mentioned on Oprah or something? So it didn't really go viral. It got some huge media, and is that something you can even control? It's like saying I should really go out there and win a lottery, and then it would work, because in some ways it kind of is, and again, in some ways it doesn't matter if for some products. I mean, there's no such thing as, you don't see viral posts on content management systems and things like that. So, the stories of things that were successful in the past are so easy, because you're, first of all, selectively going to just pick the winners. You're not going to even have heard about the carnage along the way, right?
And that's what they say, my 10-year overnight
Well,
success,
exactly, exactly.
or my 20-year. And people don't see the behind the scenes, the grueling years, the trial and error, the failures to get to where they are. And maybe let's talk about the process. And I think when you think about, launching a product, the ideation, there's so many phases. But what I've seen is a lot of times people get discouraged, especially at the beginning of the year. They're thinking, like you said, that's going to go viral, and maybe they're comparing themselves to others, but they abandon ship and they throw in everything because it's not working. And for me, the recommendation is, if you have some form of process or framework, you can go back and you can pinpoint both what's working and double down on that. But conversely, at what point did we start kind of, we had a bit of adoption, we had a bit of uptick here, and it started falling off.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing? Are you seeing people having a process? Are they winging it and just wanting this, chasing the viral post? Or what are you
Well,
seeing in the
I
founder
mean,
landscape?
that's one of the things we train them on, and certainly why. And thank you, because you coach. For those that watching don't realize that you actually coach some of our clients directly on this. A lot of it is that, right? So it's, what is your process? So if you're in the software business and you're SaaS based, what's your renewal rate? So if that's dropping off, you're great in sales, you're not good at retention because your product isn't delivering. Are you tracking that? How are you getting this feedback in the least expensive way possible? And we talked earlier about, getting a client to commit to some features that maybe aren't even in the product. Like, well, I'd love to buy a product if only it came in blue. Okay, how about you buy the red one and I will commit to it being blue before you pay? Versus, okay, I'm going to go away for 3 months. I'm going to come back. It's going to be perfect. And I remember working with one client, and they're like, I've got these guys. We're so close. They just want this, this, and this. We're going to build it. We're going to go back. They went back a couple months later. The person didn't even work there anymore. The next person in had their own ideas about what they would want in the product. If they had said, okay, tell you what, let's close this deal. Before you pay, we will deliver on this, addendum of items that should be in there. And the new person would have come on board and you would have said, hey, I delivered on our contract, pay me. Instead, they had to resell again, and this person just wasn't interested. And so how can you, as a process, how can you figure that out as fast and as cheaply as possible? And that's not just the software world. The software world, that means show them wireframes or mock-ups and make sure that they have the features they want before a coder spends a second on. Those are your most expensive people, right? The coders. But that could be, if it's a physical product, it's a 3D printed version of what you're going to create. It's virtual reality, great now for showing someone spinning a product around in the air. In a healthcare environment, it would be, who's the payer of this product. So when we work with healthcare people, first of all, what are the compliance and regulatory hoops we're going to have to jump through even before we build this? Oh, wait a second, they're going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we were hoping to sell this for a penny. We don't have nearly enough runway. So you really have to look at all of those things, and again, from building it right through to managing the client using it. What is that going to be? And if you don't know, you're kind of walking through the jungle hoping you're going to find your way out, and you might not.
Mm-hmm. Or you might, and it's, 3 times as long and
Mhm.
5 times as expensive.
Yeah, there's a lot of people don't. Again, I'll talk about McDonald's a lot because they were such a great client. But I remember we quoted them a price on support, and the guy shook his head, and we were like, "Oh, we blew it." And he goes, you don't understand how big we are." He goes, "If making a mistake is a 1 in a million event, we're going to give you 3 mistakes a day, kind of thing, because we've got that many people looking at it. So you cannot bill us this because we will destroy your company, and we don't want to destroy it. We want a successful company. So you know." Always factor these. And his example, I think, was like just sending a poster out to every store for us is $100,000 kind of project, right? Because we've got this many stores and a $5 poster and someone packaging it up, or it was probably more than that. But he said, so don't just throw a number out there, $5,000 in support. Go, okay, well, it's $20 a person in support, and you've got 30,000 stores or whatever. Do the math, present it to us. We've seen that math before. It makes perfect sense. So he saved us from killing ourselves on our best client, right? Because we wanted to make these people happy. So I was lucky in that case because the client was like, "Don't cross the road now. There's a truck coming." And so you need to think, okay, what if we're wildly successful? We get this big, large enterprise company, and there's kind of some good ads about that. It's like, we just closed our biggest deal ever. Oh no, we just closed our biggest deal ever. So can you manufacture the product? Can you get the supplies that you need? Will your software scale to that? Does these are all things that without spending a dime, you can start to plan out. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, and there's actually a ton of stories of companies that failed because they were successful. Their software broke, crashed, and they lost consumer confidence, or they got hacked, or something like that. So people don't want to. I mean, again, I'm that person too, right? It's like, oh, I've got half an idea. I want to go out and build something. I want to show something. You definitely have to take a beat. You definitely have to have document a lot as cheaply as possible, because you're going to need a lot of runway. You and I have seen this. It's hard on relationships. It's hard on cash. It's never fast. It's not it's not overnight.
I think this is the hard truth that people need to hear. So for those people who are listening, like the runway, the planning, the foreshadowing before all this is where, really the rubber hits the road, because like you said, you could burn through cash before you even hit,
Oh,
any kind of product development. And that's where the real, like, as you said, coders and software, that's where it just kills you. So I just think that first ideation part is just critical, to really surround yourself with people who can help you. And even like you said, I worked in devices for 20 years. So FDA and Health Canada shut us
yeah.
down so many times, and our hands were tied. And I just think we were a huge company. But for those startups who are developing something, they haven't really fully considered, what the requirements are for Health Canada, for any kind of regulations, for any governance. And it's like that will take you down as a small company.
Oh, absolutely. And I wish I'm saying these things because I did it right. I mean, I look at I quit Microsoft with just a rough idea of a product in my head. So mistake number one, I could have really worked through that product and really tested it with some people while being gainfully employed. And then I immediately wanted to have put a shingle out and have a name of a company and have an office. And so I'm burning rent now. And all of a sudden, what I think should be low pressure, I've got this that I've just pushed it down a hill. We're moving now, whether you've got the money or not. And I put so much pressure on my life and my wife and my family at the time. And I think about how I should have done that, the things I should have prepared for the day you pull the trigger and you say go, and stuff starts happening. And then I think of the clients where I had some minimal success, but I still had a bigger vision in my head. And, I was lots of examples of people that created great companies. So we had in our content management, we had a survey product in there, and that was kind of a cool little piece of it. But I had a bigger vision. Well, then this company, Survey Monkey, was just that's all they did was surveys, and they focused on that, and pay a nickel, get a survey kind of thing. And again, I had this bigger vision, and I think at the time, well, it was all at the same time. Like, why didn't I just focus on surveys? And then I would see these companies get rich. I remember one was just, all they did was book flu shots online, the way before a pandemic. But and he's like, oh yeah, we make 15 cents per flu shot, but this relationship with Shoppers Drug Mart gives us 35,000 flu shots a year, and more and more I'd find these, because we also like to envision big, right? If we're gonna build a house, it's gonna be the biggest house. Well, maybe we're not. Maybe we're gonna build a shelter. So how can you build the smallest, simplest product? Because it's easy to sell, it's easy to make, it's easy to message. All those things become easier if you don't overcomplicate it.
Mm-hmm. And what I heard there, just what you were saying, is that what I call the shiny penny syndrome. And I think entrepreneurs are just like that squirrel. They're looking around. And for me, the biggest is like, time under tension and that real focus. And just whatever you've defined, like stick in it. And I just think so often we're looking around, we're comparing ourselves, and it affects, especially if you're a service-based business, it affects your mindset, it affects your confidence. And I see the impact it has. Like even when you were talking about quoting, like people attach their self-worth to their quotes. And I'm like, this isn't even profitable what you're quoting here. And so I think it
Right.
all really does tie together.
Yeah, and people are so quick to abandon for what they think is the next gravy train. The number of clients have come back to us and said, "Oh, and it'll have Chat GPT in it, or AI, right?" I'm going to bolt the word AI on the end of anything because it seems to be getting a lot of news. Well, that's good and bad. It's getting a lot of news, but it also means that it's a very crowded space. Not that people shouldn't be, investigating AI, but whatever that latest thing is, we see so many people jump on board because they see the news. The news is the outcome. Getting in the news wasn't as easy as you, the viewer, think it was. They turned down stories on 60 other companies before they chose the one that you read about, and so it's so easy to just add, the latest shiny penny, which is, today it's AI. Before it would have been, Bitcoin, or I mean, you and I could probably name a dozen things that were shiny
Mm-hmm.
pennies.
But I think it also, when you can do everything and, can you do this? Yeah, we can. It almost, they question your credibility. And the story you shared earlier on, I sold software as well. And I remember customers saying, can it do this? And I look over at my team, they're like, yep, yep, yep. And I'm like, are we talking about two different products here? Because I just thought,
Yeah,
sell what you have. But what you said is you have to educate them or understand why is this important, this feature. Like what are you, like people are
yeah,
crawling and they're looking to sign up for a marathon clinic, and it's like, hang on a minute. And this is where we can get caught up in their FOMO and realize we need to be a trusted advisor here and understand where this motivation is coming from and teach them and just say, this is important, but talk to me about what you're doing today, because maybe version 3 would be better suited for you. And that's the thing, like you got version 1 now, sell it, but build into the contract. You can scale up, 2 minutes available, and you can start negotiating that way. But I think if you start just giving into everything, it shows like, what are you a specialist in, first of all? And just, you're delaying revenue by just pushing out, pushing out. And who knows, they could,
yeah.
when you get to version 3, they're like, yeah, can it do this now? And they don't know. They don't know what they're looking for. So you have to,
The world changes, right? The world changes in that point too. So the more time passes, the more liability is introduced into it, of course. Um, no, I really think that you really have to be empathetic with the customer, like really understand what's good for them and help them understand what's good for them. Again, we can't do this in some products, but talking them out of a feature because it's management intensive, or it's hard for a user, or it's support intensive, you've got to be pretty cut and dry on those kinds of things. Again, that probably applies to more products than just software, right? It's just like and I love looking around the world, and you're like, this could be better. This water bottle over here could have a handle on it. That would make it better. Why didn't they? Well, might be more breakable, might not ship as well, there might be a million reasons that I didn't think about why this water. I'm looking at a water bottle because that's how random. Um, but if you look around the world, and this is the other problem too with a lot of startups, is they go, I saw this thing and I think I can make it better. The number of people that are going to do a better Amazon or a better Facebook or a better whatever, and I sort of go, what's the best thing that Facebook did? Is it a feature, Or is it the fact that they had the features that attracted the number of customers they have right now? I could think of a million things that would be better in Facebook because I'm this old and use Facebook. Um, but it doesn't mean I'm going to abandon them if I don't have it. And was the hard part adding that feature, or the hard part was getting people loyal and to use it and stuff like that? So it's not hard to look at a product and make it 10% better. It's hard to change people to buy your new product for 10% more benefit, especially if one of the benefits was the billions of people already using the other product
Mhm.
too,
And
right?
and that's what I think sales is. It's change management, right? Because a lot of times, especially when companies are pitching right away, and basically you're attacking someone's belief system and saying what you're doing is wrong. Well, they're just tightening their grip on status quo. They're gonna hang on to what they're doing, and so I think it's important to really understand, their point of view, why they're doing, and no one's gonna move for an incremental return. Like the
Yeah.
pain of staying the same has got to be greater than the pain of change. And I just think you can save $50 on my Bell bill. You know what? For me to sit on hold for Bell for 2 hours, I'll take the $50 because it's not worth
And
it.
I'm going through that exact same thing right now. I saw a really great phone offer that will save me a lot of money, but before I do that, I know it's going to be painful. Uh, and it's funny when we I still do the pitch training in our organization. We're a bigger organization now, but I like to do the pitch training because I have a lot of fun with it. And one of the things we always show is infomercials because they're like this hokey version of everything we're saying. It's like this. So, for example, there's a pancake batter commercial. It's like, has this ever happened to you? And there's this complete idiot trying to make pancakes, and there's batter all over the place, and they're burning, and the family's not happy, and the kids are sad. And it's like, wouldn't it be nice if it was this easy? And so, first of all, they exaggerate the pain, but deep down, it was like, yeah, I have kind of screwed that up. I have made that mess, kind of thing. So, you've made it crazy, but that's true. And then they've once I believe that the pain was bigger than it was, and then I look at how good the world could be, and it's way better than. So infomercials super exaggerate that, but all of it's true. I need a pain that resonates with you. If the pain isn't bad enough, you're never going to change. If there's just a little bit of benefit, maybe I'll change, but today's not the day because I have other priorities, right? And today may never come because I always have some other
Hmm.
priority.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I use the same example. It's kind of that black and white. Remember the Ginsu knife? And he shows like
Mm-hmm.
cutting
Mm-hmm.
tomatoes, and it's all kids are crying, tomatoes squirting everywhere.
Yeah,
You're sad for the for that situation, and then the
yeah.
Ginsu comes out. But um,
And yet, so much of that exists in the real world. If you keep your eyes open, there's a lot of that exists. It's like, why isn't this easier? I don't
but
understand
I
it.
think that the point that's missed, Dave, is that initial. We have to get them to acknowledge. We can't acknowledge on their behalf that they actually have faced that problem before. And when you don't
Yeah,
do that and you just ask questions in their surface, they're not going to change. But that's what I see is how can you get to second and third degree impact? So when this is happening, what can't you do as a founder, as a department head, as a
yeah,
company, and let them start feeling it? Because the way in which we buy, it's emotional. It's the limbic part of the brain. If
yeah,
we don't activate emotion, frustration that kind of brings you back to that moment, they're gonna stay on the surface and be like, yeah, it's a nice to have. We got some workarounds. We'll figure it out. And that's where people play safe and there's no change.
yeah. And that's where, again, back in the old sales days, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Well, you cannot do this, but aren't you afraid of what's going to happen? And, you're not going to know what the outcome's going to be. So you better doubt that maybe you're not making the right decision. And if I can cast that on you, then I can get you to buy my product instead of somebody else's. But yeah, it really is. I mean, I can't emphasize it enough. Forget about what you're inventing. If you go out and find someone's pain, that's what you should be fixing. Again, assuming that pain is associated with dollars and someone is ready to make change. And I said it earlier on in our discussion, but if I was going to start a new company, I would just spend a lot of time looking for problems that people had that had yet to be solved. And they talk about it all the time, right? They'll talk about it in conferences in any category. One of the things we can get at Innovation Factory is market intelligence. So we can get you numbers on things. If you're a company, I think it's under $1 million, we can get you reports that you would have to pay thousands of dollars for free. That will say, the average consumer thinks this, or the average corporate buyer thinks this, or spending in this category jumped to this. And those are great trends to follow before you try to fill a gap that maybe doesn't exist.
Absolutely, test the waters before. That's one of the many perks that your members can experience. You mentioned that you coached the pitching and that it was fun. And I've done some pitch coaching as well. Been to pitch judging, and the word fun has never been
Yeah.
associated with it. So I love that you bring an element because it should be fun, and that's again what you're bringing to your audience is some levity, some fun, and just a pattern interrupt because people get up there and there's anxiety and there's nervousness. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, so one of the things we do, this is sort of an exercise that's come out of doing this now for 10 years, is we will ask them to describe the problem without talking about their product yet. So, we show them the goofy infomercials and we're like, okay, now just describe to me the problem that you solve. And they go, our product does this. Like, hold on, no. What is my problem? Why am I coming to you? And it's some of the academics, it's blown their mind. You just see the smoke coming off, but it's like if that's not easy for you, and we go back to the infomercial. So you remind them of this pain they had that they forgot they had it, and now it's so how do we remind them? And that's every product, and a good product, the pain is obvious that you solve, but it's amazing in the pitch to say, don't talk about your product yet. Talk about the problem they have, because as soon as you talk about the problem, they're like, "Oh, that's right. I'm listening now. I'm ready for this answer. I'm waving my $5 bill if it's an infomercial." And then take a beat, and then don't jump into your product yet. Talk about, wouldn't it be great if this product didn't exist and you did this? Again, infomercial commercial. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could make beautiful pancakes with, and they're like, yeah, that'd be a great work day. Well, that's what we've done. And for some products, they don't even need to see the product. They're like, oh, if you fix that, sign me up. But again, we want to show off that baby we just dressed up. We're like, no, don't buy it yet. Let me show you how beautiful my child is. And I'm like, I don't care. I need your child, right? Um, and and now again, I think if you can't describe the pain, and if people aren't nodding, because that's the body language, right? It's like, oh, totally. Talking to their friend. Remember that time this happened to us? And if you don't get that response, selling is going to be really hard. Trying to get someone to buy your product is going to be really hard.
Well, you're anchoring it against nothing. They, in their minds, they don't have a problem, therefore they don't need a solution, right? They're in
Yeah.
denial, and I think that's
So you can literally create a pretty great pitch without having a solution, because there's so many things. If you said, and if that problem's real, we solve that problem. Perfect. Is it a pill? Is it a breakfast cereal? What is it?
and that's the thing I always say: lead to the product, not lead with it. But
Yeah.
think about price objections when you do it the way you just suggested, and you've showed them. Imagine we could solve this. No talk about product. Do you think they care how much it costs?
Right. And when people lead with products, we've seen people that create an app and they're like, I can't get someone to pay $1 for it. And you're like, well, okay, well, then they really don't care, or they really don't know what it does for them. And you see that all the time. People won't get $1. How hard is it to get someone to spend $1? But you and I know that, right? You go to the app store. Do I want to spend $1? We're holding that dollar pretty tight. And and if you really understand the pain, then you could price it. You could start to play around with pricing, right? Maybe I don't want 1,000,000 customers. Maybe I want 30,000 customers at $10,000 each, right? And I've certainly made some mistakes on that with products that were, we were selling against products that were tens of dollars with our $100,000 solution. And the numbers varied and the amount of sales effort varied, of course. But I think that was one of the things we actually got wrong. We should have been selling to more people for less. So,
Mm-hmm. And so just hearing that you did make a mistake, talk to us about what you're seeing, because I know I see a lot of it is that people are saying, well, what if I fail? What if I, come up against a roadblock? And for me, the thing is, it's not what if, it's just acknowledging that is going to
yeah.
be part of the process. So what would you say to people who are listening who kind of are afraid of failure or fear?
I think right now in the world we live in, sales and marketing is experimentation. It's a full-time, ongoing, never complete experiment. And you need to have systems in place to at least know when you failed. So if I failed 5 times, that I failed for 5 different reasons, or one reason that all 5 people had in common. And this is where CRM systems are so great now. And this is where, I have mixed feelings on some of this automated marketing tools. One is I can get, sales calls that I know aren't sales calls. They're automated rules that, are hitting me that drives me nuts. But I also know that I can get a lot of data, right? I can send a newsletter out, or I can see a break report, or I can see how far someone went down the pipeline before they turned around. So there's going to be a lot of failures. If you don't know what those failures were, you just moved on and tried again randomly. Yeah, you've got a hard world ahead of you. If you were like, you know what, every single person gets to the state of signing the contract and then they don't sign. Why is that? Oh, it just turns out our contracts are too complicated. It turns out that I remember in our product we had it was a contract based thing, and the people that we were selling to didn't have the authority to sign a contract on behalf of their client. And we're like, this stalled it. They were like, okay, I can't finish the process here. I got to go to my boss and make sure they can sign that, and my boss is busy and doesn't care. And we realized that, oh, we don't really need a contract. There's not a lot of liability. We need a terms of use. People sign terms of use or user agreements all the time, but we're kind of scaring people off. And so failure is going to happen. There's absolutely no way to avoid it, and because you're also going to challenge further and sell faster, even when you're successful, and then you're going to hit your head on something else and figure out, why am I not scaling? So get used to failure. You better know what happened when you failed, and you better have great data on that entire process of finding the customer and making them aware right through to keeping them loyal.
I think it's huge. Data is your friend for sure, and it just measure what matters. But what you were saying there about just that contract and understanding why there's a delay, what came to me is the difference between the buyer's journey, so the steps they take to buy, but our sales process. And I think too often we're focusing on the steps we take, and we haven't
Yeah,
considered what are they doing? Like when they're stuck, is it because the T's and C's are unsure, or like you said, they don't have buyer authority? But if we don't understand the steps they take, how can we align to them? How can we remove that friction, compress the sales cycle, but also make the experience that much more enjoyable for them?
yeah, or even know how does this typical client buy products in this category. So we were talking to one client that was really selling one to one. Call the client up, sell them what they need, and we said, well, if you look at the industry, mostly this person buys from one specific distributor. So they've got a really complicated relationship with a distribution company that represents multiple products. They may love your product, but it's a new buyer relationship, so you have to be set up in their system. They take a meeting with the distributor, and they have a meeting with essentially thousands of products. They take a meeting with you. It's a one-on-one product. You're a much bigger investment in time. You need to sell this product through distribution. And people think, oh, one-on-one sales must be a better quality of sales. Well, no, not if they don't have time to meet one-on-one with you as a salesperson. And again, sales and how you sell is a feature of the product, and people don't think of that enough, right? Think of, not to overuse the Amazon example, but a lot of products became viable because of Amazon. They're easy to find, they're easy to buy. I just returned a product with a small vendor because Amazon's, I knew Amazon's return policy. I don't know if this foreign buyer that I got this obscure product from would have been that. And I probably wouldn't have bought it from them if it wasn't through Amazon. So now if you consider your product being viable because or not because of your sales process, then that can be a really important thing.
And so Gartner's latest report suggested that buyers place more importance on the experience, the buying experience, than they do over price and product. So just like that, like for me, Amazon is the gold standard. Like
Yep.
the money's in my account before I even drop it off in the mailbox. Like it's so buyer centric.
Yeah. And I think as much as people will complain about that not being local, I can name a lot of local companies that did not have a marketplace that they could sell their product through that can now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
am I, for or against what's happening with retail? I'm sorry about what's happening in retail. The world's changing really fast. So, and that's the other thing that I think a lot of startups need to embrace is see what's changing and how do you get ahead of that. So, my big break was betting on PCs when the rest of the world wasn't, right? Working at the Toronto Stock Exchange, flogging, doing analytics on a PC when they were pretty much a mainframe shop. But in my world, that was going to change really fast, and what I believed in, and I got ahead of that. And everything I've done in my world was because there was a big change coming, which I thought was going to be bigger than people believed, and I bet on it. So at Microsoft, I was working on the internet business when it wasn't even a business, right? And no one in Microsoft wanted it. It had no revenue attached to it. You're giving away free browsers. What's the deal with this? And to me, it seemed like an interesting business. In fact, the funny thing at the time was the person running that into the business was Satya Nadella, who was a junior director at the time, but now is the CEO of Microsoft Corporation. So, I remember Satya at the time talking about, we sell products in boxes still. Why are we doing that? We literally, if you want to become if you want an e-commerce software, we're going to sell you e-commerce software in a box so that that client can sell stuff online. Why aren't we selling the e-commerce software online? Again, sorry, I'm going down a path, but if you didn't catch a wave, there's another wave coming, and all you have to do is go, hey, if this thing happens and this is for real, what else is going to change? So if maybe you don't need to invent Amazon, but you need to realize that logistics is going to be that much harder, and I'm going to create a fleet of delivery vehicles. I'm making that up as an example, but or if and you think of so many of the billionaires that created a follow-on product to a home run. So Facebook comes out, and there's a company called Zynga, which made all these games that played inside Facebook. They didn't invent Facebook. They went, but if you have billions of people on Facebook, maybe that's going to create a demand here. And I got a Soda Stream for Christmas, and then I realized I didn't even see these things on the shelves. There's bottles of flavoring you can get for your soda. And someone went, well, if people are going to be able to make soda at home, it'll be like the old days. They'll need different flavorings, and now they can have a shelf of 60 different flavors. Whatever's changing in the world, there's a domino effect of other things that are going to change, and some of those changes are bad changes, like security breaches. And well, if they're talking now about quantum, if quantum's going to be able to crack everybody's password in the next couple of years, what are we going to do differently about how we secure our passwords? And maybe there's a market opportunity there. And maybe there's a pain that people are going to feel that you need to start doing some education that, well, there's this thing that's coming really soon that's going to create a pain. So I'm not expecting you to buy today, but keep your eyes open for tomorrow.
Well, I think the message there is change is the constant. And like you said, when you were betting on PCs, take a stance on something.
Yeah.
And even like you said, like, capitalize on someone else's, ride their coattails, knowing that like they've cracked it. Well, what are you going anticipate? What could be next there? Like, I think when you come with a point of view or hypothesis, but like put a stake in the ground so you're committed, and then you start, building around that. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're not you're interested, but you're not committed, and nothing's going to happen.
It was funny when we created a division. We have a division called CITM, the Center for Integrated Transportation and Mobility, and it was specifically around what was coming with autonomous vehicles. And what surprised me was how many peripheral companies started up that said, well, I'm not going to create an autonomous vehicle, but if there was an autonomous vehicle, parking's really broken. You got to put a coin in. So we need to fix parking. And charging, well, charging needs to be way more pervasive. And we saw companies that were launching charging infrastructures. We saw companies that were creating better parking solutions that, could be run remotely from an app and not something you physically have to go out and put coins into. But people got ahead and said, well, if this thing is successful, as it looks like it's going to be, we better get ready here. Now, the thing to manage there is if you're betting on a future market, how long do you have to wait till that market catches up and delivers it, right? So if you had bet on the internet early on before there was a lot of internet users, didn't matter, there still weren't users. If you saw, you found that sweet spot of, well, at some point, and again, my company was originally a SaaS based company. We delivered our software online, and early on, people were still don't want to put a corporate asset in the cloud. I don't know. I feel better if that's on premise. And I remember having that discussion with people. Unfortunately, ours wasn't ours is your web content, so it didn't seem absurd that your web content was on the web. But
Yeah,
yeah,
the risk associated. But I think timing's a big thing as well. You mentioned sometimes it's luck, and
yeah.
sometimes you're waiting for something to launch so that you can be the add-on to it, or the adjunct to it.
And it's just accelerated so much too. So if you look at the big ones, there was the internet, and then there was mobile. Well, first of all, let's say mobile computing with laptops and internet and mobile, and then once the iPhone was launched, it became location. Wow, I can come up with a whole bunch of different products if I know where someone is at that moment, or instant feedback. I can text them a message, and every one of those things just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it's like, if I could have a chat GPT based AI bot, I could deliver this cheaper or better or faster. And to me, I'm astounded with the opportunity. And again, it's not just like creating apps. It's like everything from how you would run a farm to how you would, you know, build a physical widget.
And the opportunities are endless, and I see that as I coach some of these clients. The ideas, I'm just thinking those are phenomenal. And so the reason I'm so passionate is that the ideas are amazing. It's just what's lacking. And this is where we all come in, is getting get that off the ground through insights, through stories, through moving these potential buyers from the unaware to the aware, because these products will work and they will solve huge problems, and they're also making an impact in the world. Like a lot of them are, addressed to the carbon footprint, driving community. Like there's so much benefit to them that my belief is just like let's do everything we can to even give these founders the confidence. I think confidence plays a big role in that, not to give up, because if they make it about themselves and they give up, they're doing
Yeah.
a disservice. They're not helping people get what they need.
Yeah, totally. And again, you just all these things are opportunities. So you just mentioned carbon footprint, and so you look at a company that was trying to sell you something, and they're trying to get you to pay cash, and for certain environmental products, you go, but actually, this is going to create this much carbon offset, and you might not have a budget for that, but someone else in your company has the carbon offset budget of $50,000, and I can give you $60,000 of that in product. And that's again a case of product that, if you really understand all the pains across the company, you can really understand who might pay for that pain. It might not even be the person you're talking to. Every time I meet with the CEO, I sort of ask them, like, what keeps you up at night? And I'm always really surprised, like, their answers to some of those things. And they're things that, it's not just invention, it's supply chain, it's regulatory things that could change and impact their business. It's how to develop the product reliably. And I'm always surprised. It's not like, oh, if only this thing came in blue, if only smarter, a better widget.
And it's the things we probably haven't considered, and I would say a lot of it's changed as a result of being post pandemic. But I think it really is our job to understand what are the things keeping them up. They can add to that, but I think when you get that information, you take that into your next meeting and you continue to gather some groundswell, but you're coming with an understanding. So right away, you're not just the same as everyone else. I'm coming with something that they're like, this guy or this girl, they know me, they get me, they understand what these problems are. Like there's a logical next step of like, you must be able to help me because you know what's going on here. And I think that people don't do enough homework, and they're showing up kind of phoning it in a bit, or maybe understanding a point of view for one perspective. It's like, no, you got to get breadth here. You have to have business acumen as to how these guys, supply chain, risk, logistics, all these things are getting the job done, because like you
Right.
said, somebody might have the budget for this that is not even on your radar.
Yeah, it's funny because as an organization, we were just taking a look at our sort of strategic plan, and we've always sort of let the entrepreneur come through the door and try to understand their problems. And there's been basic education about sales and things like that. And we just sort of said, what if we flip it? What if we stop trying to attract entrepreneurs and we start trying to attract potential customers? So and this worked for us in life science, where we, created the Synapse Life Science Consortium of the major hospitals and research institutions. And we got them as a crowd first. And then we said, tell us your problems and how do I sell to you and all those things. And then we said, hey, look, entrepreneurs, we have an interested crowd of potential clients. That worked really well because life science is so hard to get into. You don't knock on the front door of a hospital. But we started saying, in our region of southern Ontario, do we really know the companies and what they're buying? And if we being Innovation Factory and others develop a relationship with them, can we sort of advocate? Oh, I had no idea that was a big problem and that you were going to the U.S. for that. Hey, entrepreneur, you should pivot on this thing you're doing because it's not a $5 per person solution; it's a $50,000 per corporation solution to this person right here. And so, even from our perspective, taking our own advice, it's maybe we should be talking to more of your potential customers than more startups, right? Is a startup our client? Technically, they are, but is what makes them successful is, can we get them in front of clients?
I think that's brilliant. And, that I would imagine that they would like to support local, knowing that, they're having to go to the US, pay in US dollars. They can get something in their own backyard here. So I think bringing those two together, I don't like saying win win, but that does sound like a win win.
Yeah, and even if Canada, we have a lot of subsidiaries of multinationals, maybe that subsidiary gets us into the multinational or is the pilot. And I wish that hadn't really worked out for us in the past. We've always gone directly to the U.S. Um, but again, whatever relationship you have, how do you leverage that into more sales?
Well, I think you've shared so many insights from your own personal journey, as well as just a lot of the founders that you represent from different industries at Innovation Factory. So I want to thank you again for your time, your insights. You taught me a bunch today, which
Oh
is
well.
which is great. If there's folks listening, David, and they're wanting to learn more about becoming a member at Innovation Factory, or they'd just like to connect with you yourself, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way, if you go to our website, innovationfactory.ca. If you want to be a client because you're creating a company or have a company, there's a client intake form you can fill out. If you want to just start to hang out with the ecosystem, we're always doing a lot of events that are open to the public. You can come and there's some fun pitch nights. There's our big gala pitch night at the end of the year, Lions Lair, and our Synapse Life Science competition. So there's lots of ways to participate. Visit the website; it will give you the most direct. Find me on LinkedIn, David Carter, and add me to LinkedIn. I'd love to have you as part of my network, and and tell me how you think you can help entrepreneurs if it's not becoming an entrepreneur. Can you beta test software? What is it you can bring to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that, and we'll include all that in the show notes. So thanks again, David, and thanks everybody for tuning in.